Saudi Arabia has been attacking Yemen with the help of the US. Their partnership on the petrodollar extends far beyond the Saudi borders. ISIS and Al-Qaeda have been allowed to advance in Yemen and become aggressive in expansion. Meanwhile, more and more innocent people are dying thanks to the ever-powerful military-industrial complex. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we are going to look at the civil war in Yemen and what this means. Beginning with this right here. U.S. commando dies in Yemen raid as Trump counter-terror plans take shape. Right now, as you can notice from what is happening with the wars around the world, is that these policies will continue to escalate. The drone warfare and everything else seems to be going ahead as planned. Why? Because in general, the military-industrial complex runs the show. The U.S. has been without a governmental partner in Yemen since a 2015 coup by the Houthi movement. Hang on to that for a moment. Overthrew a U.S.-backed administration. You mean puppet. The U.S., under both Barack Obama and Trump, has supported a bloody Saudi-led air war to oust the Houthis. So there are definitely two factions, and that's where you get your civil war. I'll discuss it more in the coming articles as well. Accordingly, the U.S. has said to have staged Saturday's raid offshore from an aircraft carrier in the region. And they go into, tell you exactly what happened. What we need to understand is that a large percentage of Yemen is currently occupied by Al-Qaeda, what they call Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. This is something that is much larger than, these small factions in other countries. It really is significant. They have been using drone warfare on Yemen for a considerable amount of time. I even wrote about it in my first book, briefly mentioned it anyway. And, let's look at the next article. In a hideous symbol of the bipartisan continuity of U.S. barbarism, Nasser al-Awlaki just lost another of his one young grandchildren to U.S. violence. This here is talking about another attack which this time killed an 8-year-old girl. 8-year-old granddaughter. Because she was the daughter of Anwar al-Awlaki, one of the top guys. And the Obama administration said, Gibbs said, it's because she died because of her father. And that right there, it may not strike a chord with some people, but when you look at it for just a moment and realize who's fighting these wars, and who's going to win, what's going to actually come of this, not what you hope will come of this, what is actually going to come of this. When you use drones, I read a report on here on the channel before, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the number was maybe 98 or 99% of the drone bombings kill innocent people. It's insane, but they still do it, and they will, because it is big money. Drone warfare is very important, but it doesn't matter. They also use these raids. They did so countless times, and they will continue to do so. They have to expand in every means, but the technology of drones costs a lot more money than training a few infantry soldiers. And that's why you need to use these drones and expand them. So in here, it talks about the attack, talks about the civilian casualties. There are always civilian casualties in war. But how far does that all go? I'll cover that more in the future articles here. Just give me a second. This is from Wikipedia, but it is well sourced. And the font is very small. I'm just going to cover it for a moment. This is talking about the Houthis. Now, a lot of individuals out there, officials, so-called officials, say that Iran supports the Houthis. So it is a proxy war. Both, it says it right here. Now, Saudi Arabia alleged the Houthis receive weapons and training from Iran. The Houthis and the Iranian government have denied any affiliation. Okay, so we don't know who to believe on that. It's speculation. You could take a side, believe what you want. I'll leave that up to you. But what we do know, factually, is that the other side here is, unquestionable. Look at this. The United States was also a major supplier of weapons to the Yemeni government. Although, according to the Pentagon, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of that material has gone missing since it was delivered. And that's where you get Al-Qaeda and ISIS being funded, being armed by the US. Oops, it slipped out of our hands. Saudi Arabia provided financial aid to Yemen until late 2014. So the US gives Saudi Arabia money. Saudi Arabia then doles that out to Yemen. When it suspended it amid the Houthis' takeover of their cities here. So what they're saying is basically we don't want to support that regime, so we're pulling the funding back. And it wasn't long after that it became a full-scale war. You need to have your satellite cities or countries that will do your bidding, to have these strongholds. Look at the relationship between Israel and the US, for example. Very, very key. There's a lot more in here. I'm only covering, a brief portion of that. Regardless, what has happened here is a travesty, because the expansion of war never helps anyone except for the military-industrial complex. Saudi Arabia announced on Wednesday night that it had begun military operations in Yemen, launching airstrikes in coordination with a coalition of 10 nations. US, of course, being part of that. The strikes came as Yemen was hurtling closer to civil war after months of turmoil. Fighters and army units allied with the Houthi movement threatened to overrun the southern port where it besieged the president. And no doubt there's an expansion of war that is going on in Yemen, being funded, both sides of the war. And meanwhile, it is allowing Al-Qaeda, both directly and indirectly, allowing Al-Qaeda and ISIS to expand. Look, even if it was natural forces, even if they weren't handing them weapons and funding and training and everything, if you just continuously bomb a country constantly, and you're killing fathers, mothers, children, everyone, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to create a backlash. And that is exactly what's occurring right here in Yemen. Why is anyone surprised? Well, you shouldn't be if you are. Then you have this: Saudi Arabia, quote, deliberately targeting impoverished Yemen's farms and agriculture industry. The reason is so that when it comes time and the war is over, they will not be able to eat, they will starve, and they will suffer. That is the point. That's like salting the earth. Whether or not this is true, again, take it for what it is. But it looks like it definitely could be a plan. What they do, they always target specific and select targets, in fact. So this is what's happening right now, and it shouldn't really surprise anybody. A forgotten crisis, mass starvation in Yemen as US-backed Saudi war and blockade push millions to the brink of famine. According to the UN, basically the numbers are staggering. 14 million Yemenis are suffering. And think about everything that's happening right now. Who gains? Who stands to gain? The people in the West give a damn about what happens in Yemen. I mean, I'm not trying to look at it, in one way or the other, but we need to stay out of other countries' businesses. Look, if Saudi Arabia wants to bomb Yemen, as bad as that is, there should be no backing by the US. It just shouldn't happen. And they shouldn't be there to, fund the other side of it and saying, no, we don't want Saudi Arabia to back them, so we're going to put some, funding and training and everything on the other side and let them butt heads and use a proxy army to fight against them because we don't want it to happen. No, we should stay out of their business. We cannot do this all the time because it doesn't basically, you're trying to push basically the side that sides with you in order to say, look, if they're on our side, we're going to be safe. No. A nation destabilized is going to have their own agenda and their own factions that form. Look at all these nations forming these little tiny factions that are against everyone another. Surely they're going to be against the big forces which are bombing them on a daily basis. And last but not least, this right here is very crucial. And when I talk about the 7 countries, there was just one that was left off of the list that we heard about. 7 countries in 5 years. This is the original list: Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off with Iran. And the only difference, of course, is Lebanon replaced with Yemen. So pretty close, I would definitely have to say. What this shows you is how serious they are. And I mean, look at Syria, Yemen, Libya. Look at what the rhetoric going on with Iran. We know how serious it is. We know that it's getting worse. We know that this is their plan to engage in warfare, and the military-industrial complex is behind this. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. If you found the video informative, then I know you'll find my book, The Money GPS, even more informative. So head over to Amazon, where they have a look inside feature that's going to allow you to flip through the pages of the book and see if you like it. Take care.